And one category of such evidence is stone tools. Now, some stone tools are very simple. You might not even recognize them as tools unless you were an expert trained in this, because then you might be able to see, well, here, there's a certain kind of wear marks on them that show that these simple stone tools were actually used for very complex tasks, like scraping hides, for tanning or something like that. But then there are more advanced kinds of stone tools that you would recognize, immediately recognize. Even a child would recognize an arrowhead, stone arrowhead, on the ground. Probably many people around here found them, when they were wandering out in the woods or something like that. So those would be called paleoliths, the more advanced kinds of stone tools that you would immediately recognize. And the eoliths would be those that are a little bit harder to recognize unless you're trained.
Right. Okay, in human devolution, you say the theory of purely mechanical UFOs breaks down under careful investigation, and the UFOs and aliens come to resemble beings inhabiting extraterrestrial levels of the world's traditional cosmologies. Are you in effect saying angels and aliens are the same beings?
The same kinds of beings, I would say. I see that the whole universe is inhabited, not just this planet. Of course, this is an idea that was very common in the past, where people understood that humans are not alone. We're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. And as far as UFOs go, there are basically two kinds of researchers there. There's what I would call the nuts and bolts kinds of researcher, who believes that, well, yes, there are beings like us on other planets who have similar kind of technology. They've been able to, refine metals and work them and make them into machines that have abilities maybe a little bit greater than we have today. But then there's another class of researchers who look at that UFO phenomenon and start to see some spiritual or paranormal aspect to it. People who have been abducted, for example, report being floated through walls, or they report communicating telepathically with these alien beings. And one of the scientists who studied this phenomenon was Dr. John Mack, who was head of the psychiatry department at Harvard University Medical School. And he began researching this with a skeptical attitude, but in the end, after studying thousands of these cases of abductees, he concluded these people are not insane. These people are not paranoid. They're not displaying any psychotic symptoms. They're displaying the same kinds of symptoms that, say, a soldier who'd been in some violence would display. In other words, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And he concluded that these people have undergone some actual traumatic experiences that they've reported as being abducted like this. So he wrote a book about that. And of course, his colleagues at Harvard University they couldn't believe it that one of their colleagues from Harvard University was publishing things like that. So they convened an academic court to get him removed from his position, but he successfully fought that. And I'm sad to say, he died in a mysterious automobile accident in England a couple of years ago. But I'd met him personally, and we were staying in touch with each other. But he had concluded that in his book, Passport to the Cosmos, he said, if we really look at all the evidence, it appears that we live in a multi-dimensional universe that's inhabited by all kinds of subtle beings. You can call them whatever you will, angels, gods, goddesses, whatever. But we're not alone in the cosmos. And that's something I deeply believe.
You mentioned humans being abducted and taken through solid walls, and I've got some friends that have claimed, that they go right through the bricks of their house when they're abducted. Now, obviously, extraterrestrial beings and UFOs, if they're coming here from far away, they have to be approaching a speed of light. And at that speed, I mean, you would run into something pretty quick. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there, planets, asteroids, whatever. So they've got to have some kind of way that they can just go through
Well, I
solid.
think they're traveling
Yeah.
by non-mechanical means.
Okay.
There's more to it involved, and you know, we see if we look at the Bible or any of the world's great spiritual traditions, we'll see that they give accounts of people traveling in different ways than we're familiar with, going to different dimensions, to heavens, to hells, to
Right.
and I think that's really possible. I think that that people in different times and places have developed means of travel that are different than our current means of travel, using rocket ships and airplanes and things like that.
Who was Samuel Wilberforce and Thomas Henry Huxley? And is that the same Wilberforce that this movie, The Amazing Grace, is? He's the writer of that song, and there's a movie about his life. It seems like he's probably the same guy. I don't know.
Well, Thomas Henry Huxley was the original supporter of Charles Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a very famous debate between Huxley, who was a supporter of Darwin, and Wilberforce, who was a member of he was a bishop of the Anglican Church, but also a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
They had a famous debate at an English university. And the usual story is that Huxley won the debate,
Right.
and after that, you know, evolution triumphed.
Yeah.
But I think that's 150 years ago, and when I read over Wilberforce's statements that he made during that debate, I think they still stand up today as critiques of Darwinism, and I don't think that Huxley really defeated him at all. And I think the debate is still going on. We all know it's still going on. It's a matter of controversy between the supporters of intelligent design and Darwinism, or creationism and Darwinism. I think it's a debate that's going on. I think people have different opinions about it, and I think those differences of opinion should be reflected in the public tax-supported schools.
Right.
Now, some people say, well, you know, that'd be, you know, mixing God and religion or something. They think that, but actually, even Darwin talked about God
Sure.
in his book, The Origin of Species.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, in practically all the editions of that book, there's a line where he says, yes, you know, I believe that in the beginning, God breathed, you know, or, well, he said the Creator with a capital C. He said the
Mm-hmm.
Creator breathed life into one or a few living things and then let the rest of them evolve. Now, there are two things there. I don't believe that the evolution part of it, but I do believe the part where he says the Creator breathed life
Right.
into the first living things on earth. And that's Darwin's own words.
Right.
So if you want to say you can't mix God and religion, then the first person you should take out of the science curriculum in the public schools would be Charles Darwin and his
Right.
theory of evolution.
Now you point out that people want a simple creation account, a simple Darwinian account, or a simple extraterrestrial intervention account. The Vedic account incorporates elements of all three. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yes. As I said, this question about the origin of life, the origin of the species, is one that has puzzled people down through the centuries, and even today, people
Can't you
are
just give
still
us a
fighting
simple
about
answer?
it.
Where did we
Right.
come from?
That's what they want. They want a simple answer that
Right.
either, you know, God created everything, or we simply evolved from apes, or the ETs brought us here.
Sure.
But I think, yes, there is God involved. There is some overall guiding intelligence involved. But I think there's also a kind of evolution, but not the kind that Darwin talked about. He thought the first living thing was a very simple single-celled organism, and that you go from there to the more complex types. I think the first living things were the most complex, and that we've kind of gone down from there.